Here you will listen in on part 2 on our fireside chat with Dayna Mondello, where we talk about sparking the liminal fires in a time of great change and how we steer this light in our lives while there is an evolution of human consciousness. We talk about ancestry, and Dayna goes more deeply into the relationship between women and their bodies and nature and natural cycles and the power therein, and what we can lean towards to remember, what we can remember and reclaim. I am honored to share this second part of our conversation with you, and I hope it brings warmth to your day. And as always, here, if you share or subscribe to the podcast or give that warmth and pass that light on to a friend, that is how we gather more around the fire. Thank you for being here, and enjoy the podcast. I think the phrase, though, of the liminal fires, which is stunning, because that's the space through all of those who have a pulse on indigenous or natural rhythms. It's those liminal spaces, and they happen twice a day, right? And then they happen seasonally, and then they also happen in our lives. So on that quest, it seems that you had both the depth of the singular experience, like the distillation of the internal, but then this is the thing that seems counterintuitive in your modern world or linear way. But when you do that, you actually feed the community at the same time. And that's why going in to align with your purpose or whatever's calling right now is the way to get the clarity. So when you picking back up on this thread of yours that you guys were together and stoking the liminal fires, and then of course, and you keep using the word plunk, which I love because it's like this, it is a counterforce, right? A plunk is a counterforce.
That's good. So remind me the question.
Sure. So while you were there with them in the vision quest and you went through, the cutting of the cord, you have to leave. Like I was saying, that this is the generation that's sort of like leaving behind. It's almost like we're midwifing something, in just being.
Yes. I mean, in general, I feel a call to do work like, sitting in nature, because, and everyone, like you mentioned, everyone's different. Perhaps to clear the decks, you'll go to a, 10-day silent retreat. But to me, there's an embodiment that's been calling for all of us, and a balance to even just technology and, our addiction to that and saturation with it. But also we can talk about, like, we're animals, and we're, and the feminine ways of knowing, and the dark and the earth and sex and all the things, like it's just like oozing and proliferating all around us. But it's, in general, our world has become so afraid of just lifing in a very natural embodied way. It's not even that complicated. It's just that, and it is scary. I mean, let's be real. I mean, to do this kind of a vision quest, the one I went on this summer was held by the Animus Institute. Incredible, integral, these people are so holding with such deep integrity and knowledge and wisdom over many, many years. But you go out to do something like this, and just the simple fact of it, of letting go of the phone and just sitting and trusting nature, is one thing, but it's also dangerous. There's like a danger element, you're actually, sure, the danger internally of like, wow, I want to let go. Severance it's not like it's just a nice idea that we can like discuss and write about and put pretty words around.
Mm-hmm.
It's really scary for all of us to be in the blank space and what's next. And obviously we're in that. I mean, obviously we're in tremendous change, and there's an opportunity for all of us to really go deeper within ourselves in whatever way. This just happens that, framework happens to work really well for me. But I think the reason it does is that I desire to live more as my animal self, to love and appreciate my human self, to know that my humanity is a doorway through, just like the child self within is a doorway through, which is why I work with children. And I do believe that for all of us, we all have to learn. I'll speak for myself. I have to learn and have had many opportunities through all these different liminal practices, soul practices, how to remember and love my human self. I think for women in particular, the area of sex and voice, these are not small. And it's not small to endeavor to truly embody that. I think a lot of people give lip service. I know I have, and I thought I've healed so much. Then I'm humbled all the time, and I want to be, because I want to really learn how to actually live this, which I think is, the balance of this, the individual process. Like if I'm really committed to getting in the way of situations where I'm going to be called out on the darkness within me that I can't see, and feel the pain of that, and be willing to let go and become something new. One of the cool things that happened on this fast and in the summer was I was standing by my car, which that's going to sound really dissonant with all that I said, but there was a section of it where we had our cars, and I was standing by, gonna do something, get some food or whatever we were doing, and a caterpillar started running towards me. I'm not kidding. I was standing there. I was so in shock about it. I looked over to my friends. I said, no, please come over here. The caterpillar is running towards me. It was so stunning and funny. And it stopped a foot in front of me.
Oh, wow.
And started digging a hole and putting itself underground. I had never seen this. I was like, what is even happening? And this is the thing, there's so many marvels. There's like endless marvels in nature, like endless. And so I stand there, and a couple of the women are standing around. We're just watching this thing bury itself.
Wow.
Just new, I know. And these things, it's like a wild thing to watch, but it was for me, I would say. I just sat with that image, and that's like, when working with imaginal, I take an image and I sit with it. I'm sitting with that. Wow. I had no idea it was even a thing that some caterpillars go into chrysalis underground.
Is that the Luna moth?
Well, perhaps. I don't know about Luna moth. This particular one is a hummingbird moth.
Oh,
Because I took my, it didn't have my camera, whatever I did, but I did take note of what it looked like, and I can't remember the name right now. People know it because I think they eat like tomatoes. No, they're really a pest if you're trying to grow tomatoes. So I took note of it, and I thought, oh my goodness, there's really something about this for me of it's a different kind of metamorphosis. We all know the butterfly. The moth is a little bit different, and I can just say that having this experience and having that conversation really impacted me, and I think about it and I take it in, and I realize, yeah, okay, because this phase of life is about in maybe always, my willingness to be in the dark and to not know, and to trust in a way that I've never been able to trust before. It scares me very much. Of course it does. And so I will, I hold on to that image, and I say, okay, well, I can transform underground even in a way that feels like I might die, because that's what we associate, certainly. and it's not like, well, I might die. You're gonna die.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like, but I'm saying I want to. I'm like, that someone called it out this way the other day. I was like, oh, but it feels like do or die. And they were like, well, maybe it's do and die because it's time. So maybe that was too random for the conversation, but
No, I think, no, please don't do that
drift.
to it. Mm-hmm.
Get the drift. You get the drift. Like, this happens for me in the chaos and the, just the animal beast nature of nature. Like, this doesn't happen sitting on a cushion for me. I mean, that's just for me. The things that I have to do that tend the flame and tend the liminal are all about my body. And yeah.
And I'm going to say, I was going to say moving it, but I only was using that word as a juxtaposition to sitting. Right. It's like about you moving your, being in touch with your body, but moving it into the nature realm, even if it's not all the time. Is that what you're saying? Like for
Yeah,
you?
because I mean, I don't know. I think that feminine, masculine, sometimes it's tough, but it's true. I think most women, I'll just speak for myself,
Mm-hmm.
much more need to move,
Mm-hmm.
sit still and sit down and be quiet, much more need to express and to be in tune with rhythms and cycles, obviously, but to trust. I mean, we have that natural gifts in knowing and intuition and healing. And it's, it comes to, the mouth of the earth and the mouth of the sex, in one tradition, the upper mouth and the lower mouth, and the connection there is really pertinent to me right now. And it's easy to bypass and not think about sex. It's really easy to bypass and not think about nature. Sure, I went for a walk, or, I saw the beautiful tree colors, but to encounter, and again, that doesn't even have to be a big sky parting and the caterpillar runs to you situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
it just, I'd like to talk about a workshop I did last night, but I want to be aware of time. I mean,
Talk about the workshop from
all
last night.
right, it keeps popping through. I mean, there's a woman named Carly Ray Bowdry, I think is how you say her last name, and she has a workshop called Nectar, and it's mapping, it's vagina mapping, it's mapping the sex, it's actual like education and self-healing. And it's so important. It's so stunningly simple. It takes the breath away, like to actually know the anatomy and to actually touch and know the quality of the tissue, what the tissue is saying, and what is happening inside. I will say that I was, I don't know, 51 years old, but for the first time doing something like this. What?
Mm-hmm.
It makes
Right.
no sense
It
at
makes
all.
no sense. Yes,
No
agreed.
sense at all. That
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that my sex is for is, um, sex, or I don't know, a problem, I have to go to the doctor, or wait a minute, there's so much held in the tissues. There's so much to know and learn if I'm paying attention, I'm listening.
One thing I say is we're only taught how it relates to other. Like in this class I teach with women, like women are like, oh, it's for sex with another, or like you said, problem. So I need to go to the other, or I'm having a child, the other, and that's it. Otherwise, it just exists.
Well,
So it's phenomenal to hear you say this, is all I'm appreciating.
yeah, the
Mhm.
sex, it's for us, we have so much power. We have so much power. And there's so much, just like, sitting next to a tree, the tree's speaking with us. There's so much that can be learned in, dream work and lots of liminal practices. But simply being and touching oneself and listening, it is possible to heal many things. It's possible to learn, in my case, when certain organs are out of alignment and the downstream effect of that.
Mm.
How, deep scar tissue is still holding so much pain, and I didn't even know, but I put my finger on it gently for myself, and I sob like a baby because there's so much grief inside me. I don't even pay attention. I don't even know. But if I sit, just like if I sit on the earth, I start to know things. And if I pay attention to my sex, I think it's not, I don't know, I feel very strongly about it. It's so necessary for me, as I step into, this next phase of feeling like a celebration and a, like, it's a privilege and an honor now to do the ancestral work I have to do. I felt resentful about it most of my life. I've just felt like, are you kidding me? The layers of stories and all there is to hold, and even still putting my own hands inside my own body, and still there's a feeling of like, wow, that's a lot to hold. I don't want that to be mine, but then I can shift, and it's just new this year that I can shift and be in true appreciation that I get to. And maybe that's, one of the pieces I really got to create intentional, like self-created ceremony around, is stepping into this third phase of life. Menopause, people call it, elderhood. I don't know, but it's real. There is a real coming of age, like second coming of age that's happened. And it's, this is a signature of it. And I'm very, very grateful that I've found it, that I can find this place in me, and it's spacious, and there's a lot of power there to hold. It's a lot of responsibility. So I'll just continue to put myself in the way of these kind of practices and these kind of conversations. So I can, keep bringing myself forward in that endeavor, because that's what I'm going to assume, because I desperately, and like my whole heart and soul has needed and wanted just the little bit of attention, even that I gave it last night. I can't underestimate that. I can't underestimate that, how deeply women want. I'll say, I can only speak for myself, how much I want to be seen and heard and felt and integrated. And when I can become soft, pliable, open, and move, the hard wire and rocks inside my body into softness, and then connect that with, through the channel in the center of the body to the throat. Obviously the sex in the throat and the mouth are so deeply connected. It's where I'm drawn. Women who you can hear it in their voice, you can feel it in their
You
body
can.
when they're present in a way, and know they're animals, they're humans, and the multitude of things, because we are good like that. Can speak in many, many languages. We can speak tree language, which is incredible.
It was my first healing. I'm not going to peel too far off here, but the first healing class I went to, I'm using that term because it doesn't matter the modality, and they told us to go find the beat of the tree and find out what the tree wants, because if you cannot work with what a tree asks, then you cannot ask a human body to work with you. That was my first teaching, and it was like profound for who I was at that point, to be like, you want me to go talk? Like my response was, you want me to go talk to a tree? Like I liked the idea, but it was against my logical brain that like, well, then I'm gonna have to come back with the right, like, you're two people when you're crossing thresholds. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go talk to the tree. That sounds really beautiful. I agree with that. How do I know if I did the right job? How do I know if I hear the tree correctly? And then when I went to the tree's just like, it's fine. It's not hard. I'm like, yeah, it's just like this. The tree's like, it's fine. I'm like, oh, are you all like this? A lot of us. Oh. I can remember that tree being like, it's like that kindergarten teacher that's like, I am okay receiving the one who doesn't know. You know what I mean? And I know you enough, especially through what you've revealed in this conversation, that there are other trees that are like, you better approach me correctly. Like, all the beings are different with what they would like to share. So it's,
many possibilities exist. That's all. And I think
yes,
I just keep coming back to what it is to be an embodied woman. And we all know, there's the threshold of, well, you're going to be labeled crazy. So we all have to, I mean, I've had to work through that. I mean, I have immediate, it's not even far down the ancestral line of being thrown my mother was thrown in a mental hospital for feeling big feelings as a teenager. Like, we live in a world that was not that long ago, in the 60s. And I know certain things of this nature are still happening, but we tend to lock away our women, lock away the idea of, well, don't get too out of line, don't get too crazy. And we use it even in language day to day, like, that's crazy. I do it myself. I'm really trying to remove it because there's
it's
such,
deeply embedded. It's you don't even, yeah.
it's deep, this idea, especially, I mean, what woman do you know that doesn't have some, measure of fear in their system to, like, go all the way with how they feel or what they need to express?
I think as you're saying this in real time, this is an idea I'm having. It also sort of links to that unpacking of the unworthiness, because it's actually safer to think you're not, like, it's a nuanced protection, right? Because if you're like, well, I'm not like, it's like, I can't feel my feelings, those are dangerous, so then I'm not worthy of the desires of my purpose. And it does this like double fold. As I'm listening to you, it does like a double fold, and then the voice that comes out is like, no, I'm fine, I'm fine, and it's like there's so much space between the being and that phrase of being fine. And you get on, those conversations. Like, I remember being with a girlfriend in Japan, and her saying that in the onsen, in the like in the hot baths, is where the women would talk, because there was so much, right? Because you were naked, and you were naked, not in an American sense, right? And so the conversations in the onsen you could have there, but they wouldn't traverse the threshold out into the everyday. And I could talk to you for forever, because of the subtle understanding of place and consciousness, and that things aren't wrong. Like when you said about I get to with the ancestral, that's a huge step for all of us, and for all of us in different reasons, and we don't need to compare. That's like kind of interesting that I've never said that disclaimer, by the way, that I did in the first one, of like, this is a place for higher beings, because it's right now, it's everything is right or wrong, and that's fine. That is one place to exist, but it just precludes a lot of other conversations. It just makes a lot of other subtleties unavailable. So it's interesting what you're speaking of, and of that, like even the meridian connection between the throat and the vagina, like it's all there. It's there if you want to see it, and it's there if you want to close your eyes or go out into nature. And I think it's interesting now, because you're talking about, when you're talking about some labeling of the first mouth and the second mouth, and then this idea of like the word, and then the child comes. And so if you remove them from that natural world, which can create a stabilizing balm for whatever is missing, even if it's not perceived linearly or quantitatively or on a standardized test, it's still there, because there's wonder, and there's like the in-betweenness of, so it's so interesting how all these pieces are weaving as I'm listening. I'm appreciating your.
Oh, absolutely, so inherent, because what I hear and what you said is that this call for all of us to grow up. I mean, to have nuanced conversation, to have differences of opinion, to see beyond the surface or the overculture, to allow oneself to feel, multiple outcomes. It's very challenging for us. We want black and white, and we want right or wrong.
Right.
But also, what is necessary for me to grow in this way and mature in this way is to have a stronger relationship with the child within myself. And if I'm not really clear, and we all have stuff that needs our attention, and
Yes.
we all get to see that if you work with children at all, it's constantly mirrored, and you get to get in there and love yourself. And I find that as I grow in my ability to mature, or allow myself to see or at least put myself in places where I might get to encounter the darkness within me that I want to know it. I just have more stamina. I build stamina to love and tend towards the child in me that are the places that most need me. But it's not just that. It's not just always heavy. It's like if I don't have a sense of play, a sense of real, like, strong sense of, like, and this is what my art practice brings me, that flow we talked about in the beginning. Like, I put myself in flow states, and like it just brings my whole body electric, everything alive. And I need fuel for this journey. I need to, I would like to bring all my parts along, because there's just like I use the word stamina. I think that's really the thing. Like, I have the stamina when I'm tending, and when I have a great conversation. And you see it. I mean, I see it in people when we're stuck, and when we're unwilling to look at that pain, or unwilling become a shell of a person. And so the child is really the way through. It's very humbling. It's the way through to my soul. And yeah, they're incredible teachers, and a deep to me in the deepest way.
But I don't know what else I could say. I feel like you've brought us back to the right. And if there's a takeaway that I would invite for someone, that's having some sort of practice of joy brings that whisper voice. Like, intuition seems like such a to some people it seems like this amorphous thing, but I think it's the most necessary superpower, because if you can find the voice, then if there's confusion outside of you, it's easier. And the more you can entertain the subtleties and understand that, like, the play is actually what can feed the stamina, for your word, of the purpose, not to do it because of, but just that they both have the right to exist inside of you. I believe, and I feel, and I'm watching as I'm in my own resurrection into like a different level of stamina, that is how the believing comes before the seeing, because you trust yourself again. Like, why does the child run away? Well, because I don't trust that I'm going to be heard, safe, seen, or held. And so it's reholding that. And, there's just nothing more connected to where we come from than a child. So I appreciate you walking us through, I'll say, an invitation, right? I think people can listen to this and pick up something from an invitation in your work and what you do. And is there anything else? I just don't like to cut people. Is there anything else that you're feeling in this moment to share?
No, just really appreciating this conversation. Thanks for the opportunity.
I feel the same way. Thank you for sharing on how to tend the flame.
Thank you.
I think this episode is the perfect entryway to 2024, where we start to shift from thinking of what we have to what we get to, and shifting away from right and wrong. I loved that to be able to discourse with her about right and wrong not being the only definition to have in the subtleties of conversation. And in fact, for those of us who are looking to expand, to integrate and expand, or to integrate and grow in alignment with our purpose, there is a necessary skill to hold the capacity of the other and to modulate the conversation above personality. Dayna inherently is an artist and a creative, and the more she steps into that willingness to be humbled by the darkness that lives inside of her, in her words, or the darkness within, the more she enlightens or embodies herself And that is the invitation from this podcast. If you're new to this podcast, you might notice that there's a dance with two names, Rebirth, Tend the Flame. This podcast started, the first subtitle of this podcast was Women Saving Lives by Living Their Own. And it was birthed in my postpartum period, birthing a son at 41. And in the evolution of the podcast, it became time for it to use Dayna's word, to plunk down and tend the flame. And so that birth and that rebirth energy will continue to swirl. But this invitation here, as you may notice that the language changing, is a place for you to come sit by the fire in a world that is sometimes chilly and sometimes too fast, so that you can tend your own flame and carry it out for you and therefore for others. If you've enjoyed this episode, please find Dayna Mondello on Instagram. Come over to Spotify or Apple and look for Rebirth, Tend the Flame, and leave us a review and start to leave these sparks and hit the match case, that we may provide a warmth for ourselves and for each other as we walk in this path of our own evolution. Thank you so much for being here.